This is all Dolphins talk on the Prime. Actually, it's both the Prime Sports Radio Network and the Our Lads Football Network. As the Miami Dolphins are coming off a tough loss, and they're going to take on the New England Patriots now for their final 3-game stretch of the season, as the Dolphins remain in 7th place for the final playoff spot, even though Baltimore beat Cleveland late last night. So any Dolphin fans that might have been a little bit worried about that, Dolphins are still mathematically in the playoffs. How's everything going, Alan?
Going pretty well down here. It would be going a lot better had Cleveland been able to hang on and defeat the Ravens last night. That was a tough one for the Dolphins and their fans because of the remaining schedule. Because, as you mentioned, the Dolphins currently still hold the last playoff spot in the AFC, but they're staring at the possibility of almost having to win out to outlast the Ravens, whose final 3 games include games against Jacksonville and Cincinnati, who we know are not exactly good teams.
Yeah, the toughest game is the Giants.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah,
and that's not a great team. I don't care they're in the running for the NFC title. They're still 5-8. It's not a good team.
Yeah, what I was concerned about, if I'm a Dolphin fan, is the fact that Baltimore not only won, but it looks like they have their momentum back. They were in a real sluggish kind of way offensively for a while. That has now changed, and it happens. Yeah, that's what you go through these stretches in the NFL. You have your ups, your downs. Even though it's only 16 games compared to 160 for baseball and so forth, and 80 in the other leagues, it's still a long season when you think about it, and there are ups and downs. And Baltimore right now looks like they're headed back up, and that's the bad news, I think, for Miami, because if they had sluggishly won an ugly game against Cleveland, okay, maybe they could still lose a game. Maybe the Giants beat them, but the way that Baltimore won yesterday, that's the thing that would scare me into believing that Baltimore is going to lose one of their last 3, which seems doubtful right now.
Yeah, and you go back to the schedule. I mean, is there any way possible to envision them losing to the Jaguars or to the Bengals? I don't see it. So it comes down to basically them losing against the Giants, who, mind you, have made some strides, played very well on defense lately under former Dolphin defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, who's getting a lot of kudos up there.
Absolutely.
But it's still not a very good team. Mind you, the Dolphins control their fate. If they can close out with 3 wins, they will be in the playoffs. But you're talking about defeating the Patriots at home and then going on the road to beat the Raiders and then the Bills in Week 17, and that's obviously no easy task.
Yeah, so right now, as you mentioned, with the schedule situation, the fact is Miami, you got to win. That's it. I mean, you control your own destiny, so go out and win these football games. And if you can do that, then you can't look back and say, well, we didn't have a shot. You don't want to go into the game against Buffalo going, oh, we need Baltimore to lose that last game against Cincinnati, which you know is not going to happen. So, but this is a young team, and you would suspect that, they're not used to this, most of these guys. So it's they're going to just have to experience it, and we'll see how all these young players, including Tua, handles it.
Yeah, but by the same token, again, they are so tunnel visioned from their head coach and what he's preaching to them that I don't believe it'll ever be a case of the moment's too big for them, the playoff race got to them. I don't buy that for a second that's going to be an issue down the stretch. The question is whether they're good enough to win their last 3 games against really good teams. And again, let's not forget, this team was 5-11 last year. Regardless of what happens down the stretch, even if an absolute case scenario, they lose their last 3, go 8-8, which would mean a season-ending final 4-game losing streak, which I don't expect. But even again, under a worst-case scenario, you still will have taken a step in the right direction in 2020 with a young core, many of whom will be around for a while. So I saw a lot of their fans on Twitter and on social media basically suggesting that the Dolphins are playing with house money down the stretch. And if they make the playoffs, that's just icing on the cake. And there's certainly something to that. Obviously, you get this close, it would be disappointing if they can't come through and get that playoff spot. But yeah, it's not going to be easy because the schedules simply just are not favorable at this point.
Yeah, that's actually what you think about if you lose the 3 games and the coach or whoever needs to console the players. This is what we'll talk about, but you don't want to go there, and I don't think they're going to have to go there. Again, whether or not, and we can kind of talk about the game, of course, because they're in a big hole, and it looks like it could get uglier, and maybe this is going to be one of those really bad losses that could affect them the rest of the season. But instead, they fight, and they put themselves in a position where if they could have stopped Kansas City on a 4th and 1, or if they had a missed field goal, which wasn't a gimme, that, hey, maybe they would have had it, or they would have had a chance to win the football game. So that is going to go a long way, confidence-wise, for this football team as they take on the Patriots this week, a team whose confidence had to have been shattered big time going up against that LA Ram defense. And Cam Newton, you can't trust him from week to week.
No, and we talk about the Dolphins being in a precarious position despite it being 8-5, while the Patriots are 6-7. So they're not mathematically eliminated,
Nope.
but for all intents and purposes, they'll be out of the playoffs for the first time since 2008. And those of us suffering from Patriots fatigue will get some relief.
Yeah.
A cure, at least for one season. The thing is, the Patriots are a dangerous team, though. Before that game against the Rams, when they looked pretty bad, they had been playing some good football, and they're a bit problematic for the Dolphins because they have the ability to play very good defense. They also have shown the ability to succeed on the ground. And if you remember the first game of the regular season,
Yep.
when the Dolphins were at Gillette Stadium, the Dolphins could not handle the running game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of a concern. And the other concern is that the Dolphins are really, really banged up on offense at the skill positions, I should say. And when we're talking about the running backs, they were without their top 3 rushing leaders against Kansas City on Sunday, which is not ideal, but they don't have really a pure workhorse feature back type of guy. So it's not as significant as potentially being without your top 2 receivers. Not necessarily in terms of production, but in terms of ability, and that's Devante Parker and Mike Gosicki, both of whom were injured against the Chiefs. And early in the week, the indications are that Parker's injury is not that serious in terms of multiple weeks, but the reports out there are that it's a hamstring injury. If he can't play, that's a huge loss for the Dolphins. Gosicki's injury was ugly looking. I mean, smelled of a separated shoulder, broken clavicle, that type of deal.
Wow.
And the way he walked off the field on Sunday, it was kind of difficult to think, he'll play next Sunday. It certainly didn't look that way. And Mike Gosicki is a big factor in the Dolphin passing game. So if it were to be the case that both Gosicki and Parker are out against a New England defense, which can be effective, remember what they did to the Chargers 2 Sundays ago, that's problematic. It's not the same type of thing as looking at 8-5 versus 6-7. This is not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. And then you worry about Vegas and Buffalo after that. It's a matter of taking care of business against the Patriots. Yep. And again, that's going to be a tough game for the Dolphins.
Yeah, because the Patriots actually were really their playoff hopes were kind of put to bed last night because they could not afford Baltimore winning that game. And because, again, Baltimore is now – because New England's going to need Baltimore to lose twice. And that's just not going to happen.
Well, they were pretty much done the second they lost to the Rams because at that point the best they could do was 9-7. And it's really hard not to see at least 7 teams in the AFC finish with 10 wins or more. So.
Oh, yeah, now forget it because of Baltimore. Yeah, that's why if Baltimore would have continued to kind of play sluggish and ugly and lose – all right, well, maybe they're still going to be ugly and sluggish, and maybe they'll collapse at the end of the season, but that's over with. It's done. And now New England's done. They really have no hope, but that's not going to mean that they're not going to go out there and they're going to give it their all. Same mindset, of course, that Flores is used to, and the Dolphins are now used to. New England, that's how they've won all their championships, so they're not going to give up. Uh, it will be interesting to see how things go because, as you mentioned, without Parker and Gosicki, the fact is that now this really becomes a game about defense and special teams and turnovers and penalties. It's going to be an ugly. I suspect this is going to be a fairly ugly game with defense and 12-10, that kind of thing. I really like the Dolphins' chances if they were healthy. I still like them in this game. I really do. I still think they're going to pull this off, but I literally like them if they were healthy offensively. I think they were the better team this season than the Patriots. I think they would have split, which is always a hard thing to do, to sweep a team, especially in their division. A good team like the Dolphins have been this season. Now I just think it's going to be that much harder.
No, I'm with you there, but it's not a good matchup. The Patriots are not a good matchup, and I know when Bill Belichick was adamant about staying with Cam Newton as a starting quarterback after the game against the Rams. For me, if I'm the Dolphins, that's bad news. I would much rather face Jarrett Stidham.
Oh yeah,
who I don't believe could hurt the Dolphins in the passing game, and he's
absolutely
not a runner.
Yes.
Well, Cam Newton has the running element. If that's there, yeah, I'm actually very concerned about this game. I think the Patriots very well could come down here and then beat the Dolphins. And if you believe in such things, maybe the Patriots are still salty about losing the second seed in the AFC playoffs last year because they lost to the Dolphins at Gillette Stadium in Week 17, and now this is their chance for payback and to put a severe dent in the Dolphins' playoff hopes by winning at Hard Rock Stadium on Sunday. It absolutely is a game the Dolphins can win. I think they're going to have to win it ugly, but again, I'm a little worried about that game.
Yeah. As far as some of the bright spots in the game, and we talked about Perry and Bowden and how another offseason, how they could really impact the offense in the next season and so forth. Well, all of a sudden, with the injuries, Bowden is thrust into a bigger role and definitely showed well. And considering, I know Grant got hurt too, but considering Grant, and you had talked about his struggles going into the show last week, and then he continued. He had the big drop on the first series. I mean, Tua stands in the pocket, throws a beautiful pass right down the middle of the field, and Grant drops it. He did not have a good game, then have the injury, but it's good to see that Bowden was able to pick up, Grant's snaps. And maybe this is one of those deals where a player gets hurt, another player comes in, takes advantage of it, and runs.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bowden. I think he can be a really good player, not just this week in the end of the season, but down the line. I mean, he's you look at him and he screams athlete. I mean, you see what he does in the open field, and had 7 catches against the Chiefs. Certainly, if Parker and or Grant don't play against New England, I would expect him to get a lot of passes thrown his way. I think he's got a bright future in the NFL. I think he's going to be a factor in the offense, definitely moving into next year. I'm still on the fence about Malcolm Perry. He's got some ability as well. First of all, he's smaller.
Yeah.
I don't think he's as fast as Bowden is. So from those two standpoints, he's operating without 2 key elements that Bowden possesses. But definitely, I think Bowden's a big time. Has a big time possibility of becoming a really good player in the NFL.
How tall is Perry?
He's listed as 5'10", I believe, maybe 5'9", but he's a little bit on the small side, both in the height and then the frame as well.
Yeah, that's why when I take a look at De'Ara King, and there's the big knock about his height and so forth, I look at these, I just look at it with my eyes. And I go, I just don't see De'Ara King is that much smaller height-wise than Kyler Murray, than we just said, like Perry. Maybe he is, but he just doesn't look that smaller than those guys. And I know I'm getting off the subject, but De'Ara King has had such a great season. I actually think he's going to be an intriguing, if he decides to come out, middle round, 4th, 5th round guy that should try out for no question a quarterback. and maybe in a few years, he might be able to do something. But yeah, like I said, I know I'm going off topic, but it definitely, considering we're talking Miami sports here on the show, I know there are some Derek King fans down there.
Yeah, and if the thing with shorter guys is if you're going to be that small, you have to have something to make up for it. The problem with Malcolm Perry, again, as I mentioned, isn't so much his height, is the fact that he's really small frame. But
Yes.
like Bowden is a little bit taller, but he's also a lot thicker, and that's the thing. And the Derek King is really really short, and I don't know if he's got the quickness, arm strength, everything to make up for it. I don't know exactly. I don't think he's necessarily viewed as a very high end prospect for the
No,
NFL.
I don't think he will be. But again, I think that you never know. Right place, right time. A couple years from now, I see worse quarterbacks playing on Sunday, backup guys. I
Yeah,
think
there's a
Derek
lot of
King
those.
can play in the NFL. What about Matt Collins? Is Matt Collins just a good depth receiver? He was
Yep.
drafted in the middle rounds, so he wasn't like he wasn't a rookie free agent. There was some hope in Philly, but it never materialized. Can he be something better than a depth player?
It's a good question. Even you look even at his time at North Carolina, numbers aren't big. He did have some good yards per catch averages, but he got to the NFL and his role's pretty much been special teams, where he's been very good, mind you. But in terms of being a receiver, who knows how much he'll develop. He actually has done a good job for the Dolphins when he's been pressed into duty, but I don't know if he's more anything more than a depth guy, which is the problem for the Dolphins right now. Is their roster is made up of a whole bunch of depth
Yeah.
guys, which is why they can't afford to lose a guy like Parker.
Yep. Okay, on defense, Jerome Baker sure had the game of his career. Have you seen? Because the one thing that we've talked a lot about Baker is that, yeah, statistically he can make the tackles and so forth, but he doesn't make the big plays. He doesn't make the plays behind the line of scrimmage. He doesn't make the impact plays. Well, he made some good impact plays. Not that he did it all by himself, because he did have some help. I mean, on that 30-yard sack, it was Ogba that had the pressure that put Mahomes into Baker's view, and Baker was able to still make the good play. But Baker had a really good game.
He did. No, and the thing with Baker that everybody needs to understand is he was asked to rush the passer a lot more Sunday than he normally is.
Okay.
Which is why he can't do the splash plays as much. And the reason for that was that Kyle Van Noy was not playing. Van Noy and Landon Roberts both became inactive Sunday morning after they had been listed as questionable, and the thought was that both of them were going to be able to play. And come Sunday, whoops, neither of them are in the lineup. So the role of Van Noy was filled by Baker, and part of that role is rushing the passer. And you saw that play, the 30-yard sack, which was crazy. Never thought I'd see 2 sacks of 28 yards or more in the same season. That's ridiculous. But that showed you his speed, because Mahomes not slow.
No.
And then Mahomes thought he could like outrun him and just get back to the other side outside the pocket, and Baker caught up to him. But no, he played a really good game. He had 2.5 sacks. He also had a tackle for loss on a running play. And there were a lot of good plays by the defense, not just Baker. But the problem was is they also gave up a lot of big plays, and wound up giving up 393 yards passing to Mahomes, the 32-yard run for a touchdown by Tyreek Hill when the Dolphins completely failed to keep him from getting outside. And, of course, the big special teams breakdown with the punt return. And you know the Chiefs are going to get some big plays. That's just who they are, but you have to minimize those, and the Dolphins weren't able to do that.
Well, the touchdown, the long touchdown from Hill, what was that? More of a communication breakdown back there with what was it, Fejeldum? How do you pronounce his name?
Fejeldum. No, if you see the replay, he was, based on I could tell, he was supposed to provide deep help. And if you see the replay,
he bit.
As he didn't bite, but his body kind of leaned forward.
Yeah.
And by that time, Hill continues to run truck. It's completely over.
Yeah.
And Fejeldum realized that Hill was running down the field.
Probably should have tackled him.
Turned to catch up, and then that's not even no contest. So, no, and that was not good. And then Mahomes put the ball like right on the money, even though he didn't need to because he was so wide open. But yeah, that was That was clearly a misstep by Fedulum that wound up costing, and that's all it takes, just like
Oh
that.
yeah.
One little lean forward, and it's over.
What's disappointing yet promising is that I mean, you have a situation where normally these are the games the Chiefs will lose. If Patrick Mahomes has several turnovers, if he's sacked on a play for 30 yards, that kind of thing, these are normally the games that, yeah, all right, you got them, you got the Chiefs, but the Chiefs still were able to have a big lead early enough in the game with all that still taking place. I look at it as this shows you though that the coaching is there, that with a little bit more talent on the field, with guys that cannot break down assignments and things of that nature, with a little bit better of a running game, so you can keep the Chiefs' offense off the field a little bit more, that kind of thing. Just with a little bit more talent, the scheming, the coaching was there. It was like Flores coaching the Patriots against the Chiefs, and there's the mistakes, but the Dolphins just not able to capitalize on it enough the way, say, a better team, more experienced team, or again, a team with a little bit more talent would have, but they'll get there. It's early, but they'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, you look what they put out on the field, especially on offense, compared to what KC has. And
Yeah.
honestly, there's a clear difference. But hey, again, this was a loss, and they lost by 6, which is certainly nothing to be ashamed of. And they're still 8-5, 1 year after being 5-11.
Yes.
So it's impressive work, and a lot of it has to do with coaching. They have gotten very, very good coaching all year. They are talent deficient in some areas that should be pretty obvious to everybody right now. You're also operating with an offensive line.
Yep.
With 3 rookie starters who, as promising as they have been, because it does look good for the future based on what they've done, but you're gauging them as rookies, expected to get better at this stage right now. Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, and Solomon Kindley are not where you want them to be when they reach their peak in the NFL. So the offensive line, I mean, the Dolphins are last in the NFL in rushing yards per attempt. And part of it is because they don't have a signature running back, an impact running back. Well, also part of it is because their offensive line is okay. It's not a great offensive line. Now, again, it's a lot better than it was last year. And you're dealing with 3 rookie starters who clearly should get better the more experience they get. But let's not kid ourselves and start thinking that this is a great offensive line at this point, because it's not. And to be able to put up 27 points with that offensive line, with Parker and Grant leaving the game in the first half because of injuries, with Mike Gosicki leaving the game in the fourth quarter with an injury, without your 3 leading rushers, again, I want to emphasize the point that it's still your 3 leading rushers, Myles Gaskin, Matt Breida, and Salvin Ahmed. So to be able to do what they did, that's pretty impressive.
Is there any particular player to blame, scheme, on how or why Travis Kelce was able to have such a big day?
Because he's Travis Kelce. There were a couple of plays. Eric Rowe was matched up on him for most of the game. There weren't a lot of plays where Kelce was wide open. There was one play, if you remember, down the right sideline where Rowe was right on him, and Kelce basically reached over the top and made the catch. And there are times when you just got to tip your hat to a great play by a great player, and that was one of those. There was another one where Kelce got inside position on a deep slant, and well, guess what? Mahomes put it right on the money, and wasn't open by that much. So to say that there's blame to be put there, no. It's a great player having a great game. That's going to happen. I mean, Kelce leads the NFL in receiving yards as a tight end. I mean,
well, look, we talked about a measuring stick game last week, and so you got to see how certain players, how did they measure up? Were there any players that you were disappointed in how they measured up?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I came in thinking KC has a better team. No, I mean everybody made their plays. Byron Jones was involved in 2 takeaways.
which was
Great,
refreshing.
yep, great play by Andrew Van Ginkel to tip
Yep.
that first pass that was intended for Kelsey on the tight end screen. Then he had the nice punch out on the play down the sideline.
What's his role? What kind of a role do you think he could have moving forward? Do you think he could be, as far as his snap percentage and so forth, can he be somebody that has a lot more responsibility next season?
We talking Van Ginkel?
Yes.
I think ultimately he could be a guy if he who could be like in the Kyle Van Noy role where rushing the passer, drop back, sturdy against the run. Uh, there's obviously a lot of potential there. The guy makes a lot of things happen.
Yes.
Also plays a lot on special teams, so we can't forget that as well. But yeah, no, he makes a lot of things happen. Uh, he's a good piece to have on defense.
And Tua, in general, I think he, under the circumstances against Kansas City with his receivers going down, I thought he played a pretty good game. He had the bad sack at the end of the first half, which you don't want to do. But
that wasn't on him though. That was on. If you're talking about the one on the last play of the first half, yeah, because that was my initial. I saw the replay, and it's clearly on Austin Jackson who got beat too quickly by Frank Clark. Tua didn't have a chance on that one. There was one or maybe two even sacks that Tua maybe didn't need to take. Like the safety was one where it seemed to be a little bit of a slow reaction. But I'd say overall, and the interesting part to me is Tua played his best in the fourth quarter when he was without all those guys.
Yeah.
In the first 3 quarters, I thought he was okay. Then played really well in the fourth quarter, took advantage of what Casey was giving him, and 17 points. I mean, almost brought him back. If the Dolphins could have made that 4th-and-1 stop, then they would have had a chance to actually win the game.
And, in the NFL nowadays, the thing that you think that they want to do everything in their power to make the game more exciting. They want to keep everybody tuned to the games as long as possible. I just wish they would rethink this onside kick deal, because I mean, how many times when now when the team is down and you could already look ahead, that not only do they have to score, but they have to get the onside kick, that it's almost like your chances are so infinitesimally small. It's just not good. I think they have to revisit that. Doesn't mean, we've seen a couple of times where teams have come up with the onside kick, but it's just so rare. And I don't know. Hopefully they'll be able to figure that out, because I know why they're doing it, but it's just, it's one play that doesn't happen an awful lot. I mean, how many onside kicks are there?
Well, it's all about safety, and I'd like to see the data on how many major injuries were sustained on onside kicks like that. My thing is, if they're going to keep those rules on the outside, like you mentioned, it's pretty much you're down 2 scores in the winning moments, you're done.
Yeah,
because you're not recovering the onside kick. My thing is, I know somebody brought this up as a rule. I don't remember if they even voted on it. Was this notion of one time per game you can go for it on 4th and 15?
Yeah.
From your 25, and if you get it, you keep the ball. That to me would be more interesting than those late game situations where it's an onside kick that the receiving team is going to recover.
Yeah, I'd rather see that than what they're doing now. I would still rather see them just go back to where they were than to put in a 4th and 15 play. But yes, anything's better than what they have now. So
I don't disagree with you. It doesn't make for exciting television.
No. And that is the one thing, the major thing I'll tell you right now I'm concerned with the Dolphins and the Patriots this week as we wrap it up. And that is the historical records of Bill Belichick against rookie quarterbacks, first game, or just quarterbacks in their first game against Belichick. I mean, his record is just fantastic. These quarterbacks just get eaten alive. We just saw what happened to Herbert a couple of weeks ago, and the kind of season he's had. That's what concerns me the most, which is why, again, as I mentioned before, I think this has to come down to turnovers and so forth. Have to find a way to just, I mean, if you have to keep it boring, but just try not to turn the ball over because you have an offense that the Patriots run that are just they're not very explosive either, and or even again worse off because at least the Dolphins will have an excuse with injuries. New England, they've got everybody healthy. They're not an explosive passing offense. So I think if Tua can limit the turnovers, I think the Dolphins have a chance. But again, history tells us that's working against them.
Remember, I told you this is a worrisome game for me, and that's part of the reason. Belichick's history against rookie quarterbacks. The latest example being the 45-0 game against the Chargers, and a lot of that was on the special teams, which I don't suspect will happen. But the fact that he still shut out Justin Herbert in the Chargers offense when that offense has produced good numbers all year, it's a tricky matchup. It's not a good matchup for the Dolphins, especially when you consider all the injuries they're dealing with on offense. So they're going to have to muck it up, as you said. Probably not going to be a pretty game, but at this point, yeah, the stop points don't matter. Not that they ever do, but even less in this game.
Dolphins, I believe, are like a 2-point favorite. They've covered 8 of their last 9 games, and they have beaten the Patriots 5 out of the last 7 in Miami. So there are some things working for the Dolphins historically at home against New England. We'll see if Tua can buck, though, the rookie quarterback trend that has been it's been going on for a long time under Bill Belichick. So should be interesting. Dolphins need to win to hold pace for the playoffs, and let's hope that's the case because then next week we could talk about an even bigger game coming up. And again, fingers crossed because we know if the Dolphins lose, they won't be in the playoffs anymore with Jacksonville in Baltimore this week. So Miami does not want to play catch up. Big game coming up next week on Saturday night, prime time, the big Christmas Eve game. That's the biggest one of the day.
Day after Christmas.
A day after Christmas. Okay. So what do you call that? That's is there a term for that?
Post Christmas night.
Post Christmas. Okay. Yeah. All right, Alan. So best of luck covering this game coming up, and we'll talk to you all about it next week. Appreciate it as always.
You got it. And hopefully we'll be talking about the Dolphins having improved their playoff status.
That would be nice. Thanks, Alan.
You got it.